single father struggles to balance raising his daughter and a low-paying job at a restaurant. His life is turned upside down when he helps a mysterious woman, unaware that she is a millionaire businesswoman in disguise. From then on, a series of transformative events will challenge his morals and his determination. Before listening to this incredible account, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exciting stories. The alarm clock rang at 5:30 in the morning, as always. Mark rubbed his tired eyes and slowly got up, trying not to make noise so as not to wake Anna. The 6-year-old girl slept peacefully in the small room they shared, hugging the teddy bear that had been a gift from her mother years ago. In the tiny bathroom of the apartment, Mark looked at his own reflection in the cracked mirror. At 32, he seemed to carry the weight of an extra decade. The deep, dark circles under his eyes and the grey hairs starting to appear at his temples told the story of sleepless nights and constant worries. He put on his restaurant uniform, a white shirt already faded from so many washes and black trousers that were starting to become too loose. In recent months, Mark had unintentionally lost weight. Between working double shifts and sometimes skipping meals so Anna could eat better, his body was starting to show signs of fatigue. In the kitchen, he prepared a weak coffee and looked at the pile of bills on the table. Overdue rent, an electricity bill with a disconnection warning, and Anna's school tuition that had been due a week ago. He sighed deeply and put the bills in the drawer. Today was another day and he would find a way to solve everything. Anna woke up shortly, after 6, with messy brown hair and a smile that always managed to brighten her father's day. It was impressive how that child maintained her joy even in the face of the difficulties they faced. "Good morning, Daddy," she said, running to hug him. "Good morning, Princess. Did you sleep well?" "I dreamed about Mommy again. She was in our secret garden, you know. That place she always said she'd visit with me when I grew up." Mark felt a pang in his heart. Helen had passed away when Anna was still very young, a victim of an illness that doctors couldn't treat in time. Since then, he had been raising his daughter alone, taking on both the role of father and mother. "That's good, honey. I'm sure she was happy to see you." He prepared a simple breakfast for Anna, bread with margarine and a glass of milk. She ate cheerfully while talking about the drawings she would make at school that day. "I'm going to draw our new house, Daddy, the one you said we'd have someday." "Of course, Princess. And don't forget to draw the garden too." Mark dropped Anna off at school before heading to work. The Grandview restaurant was located in the city centre, a medium-sized establishment that served both executives at lunch and families at dinner. It was a beautiful place, with cozy decor and quality food, but for those who worked there, the reality was quite different. Upon entering through the staff entrance, Mark greeted Luke, the cook who had become his only true friend at the restaurant. Luke was a few years younger, single, and dreamed of opening his own business someday. "Hey Mark, how's Anna?" "Well, thank God, smarter every day. And you look like you're not sleeping well." You know how it is. Lots to sort out, little time, and even less money." Luke nodded sympathetically. He knew of his friend's difficulties and always helped in some way when he could, whether by sharing his lunch or offering a ride when Mark's car was broken down. "Attention!" Victor Sterling's loud, authoritative voice echoed through the kitchen. The restaurant manager was a man in his 40s, always impeccably dressed, and with an expression that varied between arrogant and contemptible. "Tonight we have an important reservation. I want everything perfect, Mark. You'll be in the dining room attending to the main tables." Mark nodded, though he knew this meant working later and paying more for someone to pick Anna up from school. Victor always found ways to complicate his life, ever since he arrived at the restaurant 6 months ago. The day proceeded normally until the afternoon. Mark attended to the tables with the efficiency he had developed over the years, always polite and helpful to customers. Some regular patrons already knew him by name and always asked to be served by him. "Mark," Victor approached during the afternoon rush, "I need to speak with you." They went to the small office at the back of the restaurant. Victor sat behind the desk, assuming a position of authority while Mark remained standing. "I've received some complaints about your service," Victor said, flipping through some papers. "Customers saying you're distracted, slow." Mark frowned. He knew this wasn't true. In fact, he was one of the most praised employees by customers. "I don't understand, Mr. Sterling. I haven't received any complaints directly from customers. In fact, many praise the service. Well, the complaints reached me, and as manager I need to take some measures. Victor leaned back in his chair, clearly pleased with the discomfort he was causing. I'll have to deduct these complaints from your salary this month. But Mr. Sterling, that's not fair. I need that money for... For what, Mark? To support your daughter? Well, you should think about that before you do a bad job. Mark clenched his fists but managed to control himself. He knew Victor was provoking him, looking for a reason to fire him. Other employees had gone through the same situation since the new manager arrived. All right, Mr. Sterling, can I see these complaints? I'd like to know what I can improve. Victor smiled, maliciously. You don't need to see them. Just improve. And another thing. Starting today, you'll also work on Sundays. We need more people on the weekend. Mark felt his stomach drop. Sunday was the only day he spent entirely with Anna. It was when they went to the park, when she helped him cook, when they watched movies together on the old sofa in the apartment. Mr. Sterling, would it be possible to discuss this? Sunday is the only day I have with my daughter, and she's small. She needs... Mark, Victor stood up, signaling the conversation was over. Either you accept the conditions or you look for another job. The choice is yours. Mark left the office with a heavy heart. He knew he had no choice. Jobs were scarce, and with Anna to support, he couldn't afford to be unemployed. He returned to the dining room and continued his work. But inside, he felt a growing revolt against the injustice of the situation. At the end of his shift, when he went to pick up Anna from their neighbor Clara's house, who cared for the girl after school hours, she ran to hug him as always. Daddy, Aunt, Clara taught me how to draw butterflies. That's great, honey. Can you teach me at home? Of course, and Daddy, the teacher said there's a presentation at school on Sunday. Will you be able to come? Mark felt his heart tighten. How could he explain to a 6-year-old that he would have to work on the only day they could spend together? We'll see, Princess. Daddy is trying to organize work. On the way home, Anna talked animatedly about her day at school, while Mark thought about how to solve the financial situation that was only getting worse. Bills accumulated. His salary barely covered the basics, and now he would have even less time with his daughter. At home, while Anna played in the living room, Mark looked again at the bills on the table. Among the papers, he found an old photo of Helen holding baby Anna. His wife had been a strong, determined woman who always believed that things would work out in the end. Don't give up, my love, he could almost hear her voice saying. Anna needs you, and you are stronger than you imagine. Mark put the photo in his shirt pocket. He didn't know how, but he would find a way to overcome everything. For Anna, for Helen, and for himself. He had to believe that better days would come even when everything seemed impossible. Night fell over the city, and Mark prepared a simple dinner for him and his daughter. Anna ate, playing with the drawings she had made during the day, telling stories about each character she created. For her, that small apartment was a castle, and Mark was her favorite hero. If only she knew how lost he felt at that moment in his life. The following days dragged on monotonously. For Mark. The new routine of working on Sundays had begun, and he felt the weight of this change both physically and emotionally. Anna, for her part, tried to hide her sadness, but Mark noticed in his daughter's eyes the longing for the moments they used to spend together. Daddy needs to work to buy nice things for you, he explained, trying to justify his increasingly frequent absences. I don't need nice things, Daddy. I just want you, Anna replied, with a sincerity that broke her father's heart. At the restaurant, the situation with Victor continued to deteriorate. The manager seemed to take special pleasure in humiliating Mark in front of the other employees, creating embarrassing situations and assigning him tasks that were not his responsibility. Mark, Victor shouted during a Wednesday lunch rush, Table 12 is complaining that the food is cold. Didn't you check before serving? Mark knew he had checked the food's temperature, as he always did, but before the eyes of the other employees and nearby customers, he simply nodded and said he would resolve the situation. Sorry for the inconvenience, Mark said to the couple at table 12, a middle-aged man and an elegantly dressed woman. I'll get you a new dish immediately. Actually, the woman said, looking directly at Mark, the food was perfectly hot. We didn't make any complaint. The man next to her confirmed with a nod. Mark felt a mixture of relief and anger. Victor had lied, as he always did, just to publicly undermine him. "Thank you for your honesty," Mark said quietly to the couple, who smiled sympathetically. Luke had witnessed the scene from the kitchen and approached Mark during his break. "Dude, this can't go on. Victor is doing this on purpose to humiliate you." "I know, Luke. But what can I do? I need the job. There has to be something we can do. What he's doing isn't right." Mark appreciated his friend's solidarity, but felt powerless in the situation. Victor had the power and used it to make the life of any employee who didn't completely submit to his whims a living hell. That night when he got home, Mark found Anna sitting at the kitchen table, drawing intently. The girl had developed a habit of drawing stories, small visual narratives that she told her father before bed. "Look, Daddy," she showed the drawing with enthusiasm. "It's the story of the brave princess and the hard-working king." In the drawing there was a tall figure wearing a uniform that clearly represented Mark, next to a small girl with a crown on her head. They were holding hands in front of a colorful castle. "It's very beautiful, Anna. And what happens in this story?" "Well, the hard-working king gets very tired because he works for many bad people, but the brave princess has a magical idea to help Daddy. I mean, the king." Mark smiled, impressed by his daughter's insight. Even so young, Anna realized that something was not right in their lives and, in her own way, tried to find solutions. "And what is the princess's magical idea?" "I don't know yet, Daddy, but I'm sure she'll think of something. Brave princesses always manage to help those they love." That night, after Anna fell asleep, Mark stood looking out the living room window. The city stretched before him, its lights flickering like earthly stars. Somewhere out there were people living lives completely different from his. People who didn't have to worry about electricity bills or working on Sundays to pay the rent. It wasn't envy he felt, but a deep melancholy. Sometimes he wondered if Helen would be proud of the way he was raising Anna, or if she would expect more from him as a man and a father. On Thursday, something different happened at the restaurant. A woman arrived alone for lunch, someone Mark had never seen before. She was elegantly dressed, but there was something in her posture that suggested she was observing everything around her with special attention. "Table for one?" Mark asked politely. "Yes, please. Can it be near the window?" As he escorted her to the table, Mark noticed that she discreetly observed the movement of the staff, the dynamics of the restaurant, as if she were analyzing something. "Is this your first time here?" Mark asked as he handed her the menu. "Yes, this place was recommended to me. They say the food is good and the service too." "I hope our reputation is confirmed," Mark smiled genuinely. During lunch, the woman asked some subtle questions about the restaurant. How long Mark had worked there, if he liked the environment, what the relationship between employees was like. The questions seemed casual, as if she were just a curious customer, making conversation. "I've worked here for almost 3 years, Mark answered honestly. "It's a good place with quality food and wonderful customers." He didn't mention the problems with Victor. It wasn't appropriate to speak ill of his job to a customer, regardless of personal circumstances. At the end of lunch, the woman left a generous tip and thanked him for the service. "You have a knack for this," she said before leaving. "Take care." Mark thought about that comment for the rest of the day. There was something in the way she had said those words that suggested more than a simple compliment about the service. On Friday, Victor summoned Mark for another conversation in the office. This time there were other papers on the table and an even more serious expression on the manager's face. "Mark, I have bad news. The restaurant's business hasn't been satisfactory, and we'll need to make some staff cuts." Mark felt his stomach drop. He knew what was coming next. "You're a good employee," Victor continued with a falsely sympathetic tone. "But unfortunately, with the current situation, I'll have to let you go." "Mr. Sterling, please. I have a small daughter, bills to pay. I can work more hours, accept any position." "The decision has been made, Mark. You can work until the end of the week to organize your things." Mark left the office stunned. How would he tell Anna? How would he pay the rent? How would he find another job quickly? Luke noticed his friend's state and approached as soon as he could. What happened? You're pale. He fired me, Luke. Said it's because of the restaurant's slow business. That doesn't make sense, Mark. The restaurant is always busy, and besides, you're one of the best employees we have here. It doesn't matter what makes sense or not. The decision is made. Luke was thoughtful for a few seconds. Mark, something strange is happening here. In recent months, Victor has fired several good employees, and some suppliers have complained about changes in orders, different values than they used to be. What are you trying to say? I'm not sure, but something isn't right with this management. Maybe it's worth investigating. Mark was too worried about his immediate future to think about more complex issues regarding the restaurant's management, but he kept that information in his head. Maybe Luke was right about something not being correct. On the way home, Mark thought about how he would tell Anna about losing his job. She was too smart not to realize that something serious had happened, but at the same time she was too young to fully understand the financial implications. When he arrived at the apartment, he found Anna playing with some toys on the living room floor. She ran to hug him, as always, but this time Mark hugged her tighter and for longer. "Daddy, are you okay? You look sad." "I'm fine, Princess, just a little tired." "Do you want me to draw a picture to make you happy?" "Of course, honey. Drawings always make me feel better." While Anna drew, Mark prepared a simple dinner and tried to organize his thoughts. He had enough savings to pay the bills for the next month, but after that, he would have to make difficult decisions about the apartment, about Anna's school, about everything they had built together. Outside, it started to rain. It was a heavy rain, the kind that turned the city streets into small rivers and made people run for shelter. Mark heard the sound of drops hitting the window, and remembered how Helen used to say that rain was nature's way of washing the world to start anew. "I hope you're right," he murmured, looking at the photo of his wife that he always kept in sight in the kitchen, "because I really need a fresh start." Saturday was Mark's last day at the Grand View restaurant. He worked with his usual dedication, trying not to show the bitterness he felt inside. Some regular customers asked about his departure, and he diplomatically explained that he was seeking new challenges. Luke said goodbye to his friend with a strong hug. "Don't lose touch, okay? And if you find out anything about the irregularities here, let me know." "Of course, Luke. Thanks for everything." Victor didn't even bother to say goodbye. He just waved from a distance as Mark picked up his personal belongings from the staff locker. The night was particularly gloomy when Mark left the restaurant for the last time. Heavy clouds covered the city sky, and the air was charged with the promise of a strong storm. He walked through the familiar streets, thinking about how different it would be not to make that daily commute anymore. The first drops began to fall when he was halfway home. In a few minutes, the rain intensified, turning into a torrential downpour that soaked everything and made visibility almost zero. Mark ran, seeking shelter under the awning of a closed shop, but the rain was so heavy that it splashed from all sides. It was then that he noticed a car stopped on the shoulder of the main road, with its emergency lights flashing. Through the rain, he could see a figure inside the vehicle. It appeared to be a woman, and she was gesturing with something in her hand, probably trying to use her phone. The car was an expensive model, completely different from the vehicles that normally circulated in that district. At first, Mark hesitated. It wasn't safe to approach strangers on the street, especially at night, but something in the woman's posture suggested real desperation, not danger. And after so many months of facing difficulties, he knew what it was like to be in a complicated situation with nowhere to turn. Covering his head with his jacket, Mark ran to the car and gently tapped on the window. The woman looked at him with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Is everything all right? Do you need help?" Mark shouted over the sound of the rain. The window rolled down a few inches. "My car broke down," she said, her voice showing relief at having someone willing to help. "And my phone has no signal. Could you tell me if there's anywhere around here I can take shelter until the rain passes?" Mark looked around. All the shops were closed, and the district had no hotels or guest houses. The woman was visibly nervous, wearing elegant clothes that contrasted with the precarious situation she was in. "Look," Mark said after a moment, "I live a few blocks from here. If you want, you can come with me until the storm passes. I have a small daughter at home, so it's a safe environment." The woman hesitated for a few seconds, analyzing Mark's sincere face through the rain. There was something in those tired eyes that conveyed genuine honesty. "Are you sure it wouldn't be an inconvenience?" "Not at all. It would be a pleasure to help." She grabbed a small bag and got out of the car, locking it quickly. Together they ran through the soaked streets until they reached the building where Mark lived. In the old noisy elevator, they finally got a proper look at each other. The woman was around 40, with dark hair pulled back in an elegant bun, and she wore clearly expensive clothes, though now they were wet. There was an aristocratic posture in her gestures, but also a vulnerability that Mark didn't expect to find in someone who seemed to come from a social class so different from his own. "I'm Mark, by the way," he said, extending his hand. "Olivia," she replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Thank you very much for this. I know it's not normal to help strangers on the street." "We all need help sometimes," Mark replied simply. When they arrived at the apartment, Mark excused himself and quickly went to check if Anna was all right. The girl was sleeping soundly, hugging her teddy bear, oblivious to the storm outside. "Sorry for the simplicity," Mark said when he returned to the living room, where Olivia was standing near the door, still dripping with rainwater. "It's not much, but it's our home." Olivia looked around with curiosity. The apartment was small and modestly furnished, but there was something special about the atmosphere. Colorful children's drawings were scattered on the refrigerator, children's books organized on a small makeshift shelf made of bricks and wood, and photos of a beautiful woman smiling alongside Mark and baby Anna. "You don't need to apologize," Olivia said softly. "Your home is welcoming. I see a lot of love here." Mark felt touched by the comment. He offered her a towel and some dry clothes that had belonged to Helen, carefully stored in a drawer. "If you want to change, the bathroom is there. I'll prepare something warm for us to drink." While Olivia changed, Mark prepared coffee and warmed up some leftover soup from dinner. It wasn't much, but it was what he had to offer. When she returned to the living room, wearing a simple blouse and Helen's trousers that were a bit big on her, Olivia looked like a completely different person. Without the elaborate makeup and sophisticated clothes, she had a younger, more accessible air. "The clothes were my wife's," Mark explained, serving the coffee. "She is no longer with us, but I'm sure she'd be happy to know they're helping someone." "I'm so sorry," Olivia said, sensing the delicacy of the moment. "Was she your daughter's mother?" "She was. Anna was only 2 when Helen passed away. It was very difficult at first, but we adapted." They talked softly as they drank the hot coffee and ate the soup. Olivia asked questions about Anna, about Mark's work, and he spoke openly about the challenges of raising a daughter alone, about the restaurant, even about having lost his job that day. "You seem like a very dedicated father," Olivia observed. "Anna is lucky to have someone like you. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing everything right. It's hard to be father and a mother at the same time, you know, and financially—" Mark stopped, realizing he might be sharing too much with a stranger. "Sorry, I didn't mean to burden you with my problems." "Don't apologize. It's refreshing to meet someone so genuine," Olivia said, and there was something in her voice that suggested she wasn't used to this kind of honesty. During the night, as the rain continued heavily outside, Anna woke up. Mark quickly went to the room to comfort her, but the girl had heard voices in the living room and was curious. "Daddy, is someone home?" Anna asked, rubbing her eyes. "Yes, Princess. A lady who needed help because of the rain. Do you want to meet her?" Anna nodded animatedly. Mark brought her to the living room, and Olivia was visibly moved to see the girl. "Hi," Anna said shyly, but with a sweet smile. "I'm Anna." "Hi, Anna. I'm Olivia. Nice to meet you." "Are you Daddy's friend?" Olivia looked at Mark before answering. "We're still getting to know each other, but your daddy is being very kind to me." Anna approached Olivia with the natural curiosity of children. "Do you like to draw? I make very beautiful drawings. I love drawings. Could you show me some?" Anna ran to get her latest drawings, and for the next few minutes she explained each artwork to Olivia with the characteristic enthusiasm of a child artist. Mark watched the scene with a smile on his face, touched by the way Olivia paid genuine attention to Anna's stories. "This one," Anna showed a drawing of a family, "is me, Daddy and Mommy in heaven. She takes care of us from up there." Olivia felt a lump in her throat. "That's a very special drawing, Anna." "And this is the castle where we're going to live when Daddy gets a new job," Anna continued, showing another drawing. "It will have a big garden and a room just for my drawings." "I'm sure you'll get that castle," Olivia said, looking at Mark. "Sometimes good things come when you least expect them." After half an hour of talking with Anna, Mark took her back to bed. The girl said goodbye to Olivia with a spontaneous hug that surprised and deeply touched the visitor. "It was a pleasure to meet you, Anna," Olivia said, returning the hug. "Will you come back to play with me?" Anna asked hopefully. "Who knows?" Olivia replied, avoiding promising something she might not be able to fulfill. For the rest of the night, Mark offered the sofa for Olivia to sleep on and settled into an old armchair in the living room. Olivia insisted that he sleep in his own bed, but he was unyielding in his courtesy. "You're my guest," he simply said. Olivia stayed awake for a long time, observing that environment so different from everything she knew. She heard Mark stirring in the armchair, clearly uncomfortable, but persisting in his kindness. Through the crack in the bedroom door, she saw Anna sleeping peacefully, confident in the security her father provided. There was something deeply touching about that family. The genuine simplicity, the unconditional love, the dignity maintained despite financial difficulties. It was a kind of wealth that Olivia knew by name, but had never truly experienced. When dawn broke, the rain had stopped. Olivia got up early and silently, not wanting to wake Mark and Anna. On the kitchen table, she wrote a note on a piece of paper she found. "Mark and Anna, thank you for welcoming me with such warmth. You showed me that genuine kindness still exists in the world. May life repay all the kindness you offered to a stranger on a stormy night. With affection and gratitude, Olivia." She left the note on the table, along with the borrowed clothes carefully folded, and discreetly left the apartment. When Mark woke up an hour later, he found only the note. For a few seconds, he wondered if that night had been real or a strange dream. But Helen's clothes were there, dry and folded, and the scent of Olivia's perfume still subtly lingered in the air. Anna woke up asking for Aunt Olivia, and Mark explained that she had left early. The girl was a little sad, but soon got distracted by her morning routine. Mark put the note in the drawer next to the bills, unaware that that stormy night had planted a seed that would completely change the course of their lives. The following days brought a completely different routine for Mark. For the first time in 3 years, he woke up without a specific place to go to work. It was a strange feeling, a mixture of freedom and anxiety, especially when he looked at Anna eating breakfast, not knowing how he would pay for the next trip to the supermarket. "Daddy, aren't you going to work today?" Anna asked during Monday breakfast. "Today, Daddy is going to look for a new job, Princess, an even better place than before." "Can I come with you? I promise I'll behave." Mark smiled at his daughter's innocence. "You can't, honey. But how about Aunt Clara takes care of you, and after school we go out for ice cream?" "Even without money for ice cream?" Anna asked with an innocence that broke Mark's heart. "There's always money for—" "Ice cream with the princess," Mark lied, knowing he would use his last few coins to provide that small moment of happiness for his daughter. After dropping Anna off at school, Mark began his journey through the city streets in search of employment. He visited restaurants, diners, hotels, and even shops that might need salespeople. The answer was always the same: "We'll keep your resume," or "We're not hiring at the moment." At the third restaurant he visited, the manager was more direct. "You have good experience, that's good, but I need someone who can work nights and weekends. Do you have that availability?" Mark hesitated. He knew that saying no drastically reduced his chances of getting the job, but he also knew he couldn't leave Anna alone during those hours. "I'd prefer business hours," he said honestly. "I have a small daughter." "I understand, but unfortunately I can't help you." This same scene repeated itself in several places throughout the week. Mark began to realize that his situation as a single father, which should be a reason for admiration, was becoming a professional obstacle. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Olivia was in a meeting in her private office. But her mind was not focused on the financial figures her assistant Aaron was presenting on the screen. She constantly thought about that night at Mark and Anna's home, about the genuineness of those people, about the welcoming simplicity of that home. "Ms. Olivia," Aaron called her attention, "would you like me to continue with the quarterly results presentation?" "Sorry, Aaron, please continue." But a few minutes later, Olivia interrupted again. "Aaron, I need you to do me a personal favor," discreetly. "Of course, madam. What do you need?" "I want you to investigate a restaurant called The Grand View. Specifically, I want information about the current management, the employees, and if anything irregular is happening there." Aaron wrote down the information without asking questions. He was used to his boss's unusual requests, although this one seemed particularly specific. "And Aaron," Olivia added, "I also want information about an employee named Mark, without him knowing he's being investigated, obviously." "Understood. How much time do I have for this?" "1 week, and be discreet." While Olivia organized her personal investigation, Mark continued his frustrating job search. On Thursday, he received an unexpected call from Luke. "Mark, man, you need to know something. Strange things have been happening here at the restaurant since you left." "What do you mean?" "Victor fired 2 more people this week, and this morning an accountant came here wanting to check some numbers. It looked like he was investigating something." Mark frowned. "What kind of investigation?" "I'm not sure, but he asked a lot of questions about changes in management, about orders to suppliers, that kind of thing. And you know what's even stranger? When Victor saw the accountant, he was visibly nervous." "Interesting, but why are you telling me this?" "Because I think it has something to do with you somehow. The accountant specifically asked about employees who had been recently fired. He mentioned your name." Mark was confused. "My name? But I didn't do anything wrong." "I know you didn't. But maybe someone is investigating the unfair dismissals Victor has been making. Or maybe they're uncovering the irregularities I suspected." After the call, Mark was thoughtful. He didn't understand how his name could be involved in an investigation about the restaurant, especially since he had always been an exemplary employee. That afternoon, when he went to pick up Anna from school, the girl ran to meet him with an excited expression. "Daddy, I found something amazing at home." "What is it, princess?" "When I was tidying my room, I found a box under your bed. There was a book of Mommy's inside." Mark's heart raced. He knew exactly what box Anna was talking about. It was where he kept Helen's most precious things, including a diary she occasionally wrote in. At home, Anna showed the diary to her father with the excitement of someone who had discovered a treasure. "Can I read it, Daddy? I want to know the things Mommy wrote." Mark hesitated. The diary contained Helen's intimate thoughts, including her worries about her illness and her plans for Anna's future. But it also had beautiful reflections on their family and dreams she nurtured for all of them. "We can read it together," Mark decided. "Some parts are very personal, but others I'm sure your mother would want you to know." They sat on the sofa, and Mark opened the diary to a page he knew was suitable for a child. Helen had written about a special day they spent at the new park near their home when Anna was 5. "Today I took Anna to the new park near home. She was enchanted by the ducks in the small lake and said that when she grows up, she wants a house with a similar lake." Mark laughed and said, "We would do everything to make her dream come true. Sometimes I wonder if we'll be able to give her everything she deserves, but when I see the love Mark has for our girl, I know that regardless of the money we have, Anna will always be rich in love." Anna listened intently as Mark read. "Mommy wrote very beautiful things," she said, when he finished. "She did. Your mother was a very special person, Anna." "Daddy, do you think she knew she would have to leave?" Mark felt a lump in his throat. "I think she knew that life is uncertain, Princess. That's why she wrote these things, so we could always remember her." They flipped through a few more pages, finding plans Helen had for Anna's education, places she dreamed of visiting with her family, and even some recipes she wanted to teach her daughter when she got older. "Look, Daddy." Anna pointed to a page. "Mommy wrote about you here." Mark read silently first, to make sure it was appropriate. "Mark is the most upright man I know. Sometimes I worry because he's too good for this world, always helping others, even when we ourselves are going through difficulties. But that's exactly what makes me love him even more." I want Anna to grow up with these values, to learn that true wealth is in having a generous heart. Mark felt his eyes well up. Helen always managed to see the best in him, even in the most difficult moments. "What did Mommy write?" Anna asked curiously. "She wrote that you are the smartest and bravest girl in the world, and that she is very proud to be your mother." Anna smiled, satisfied with the answer. It wasn't exactly what Helen had written, but it captured the spirit of the love she felt for her daughter. While Mark and Anna discovered the hidden treasures in Helen's diary, Olivia received Aaron's first report on her investigations. "The information about the Grand View restaurant is interesting," Aaron said, handing her a folder. "There are signs of financial irregularities in the current management. Suppliers report sudden changes in orders. Some old employees were dismissed without clear justifications, and there are discrepancies between the restaurant's business volume and reported profits." "And about Mark?" Olivia asked, trying to maintain a casual tone. Mark Allianz worked at the restaurant for almost 3 years, an exemplary employee according to all the customers and colleagues I spoke with. He was fired last week by the current manager, a certain Victor Sterling, claiming low restaurant business, which doesn't make sense considering the place is always busy. Olivia felt a mixture of anger and sadness confirming her suspicions. Mark had been a victim of injustice, and she had witnessed firsthand the integrity of that man. "Anything else about Mark?" she asked. "Single father, raising a 6-year-old daughter alone since his wife passed away. Neighbors and acquaintances have nothing but praise for him. Apparently, he's going through financial difficulties after losing his job, but maintains his dignity and continues to care for his daughter with great affection." Olivia closed the folder and was thoughtful for a few moments. "Aaron, I want you to schedule a visit for me to the Grand View restaurant. Undercover, obviously. And I also want you to investigate these financial irregularities more deeply. If something wrong is happening there, I need to know exactly what it is." "Yes, madam. And what else can I do regarding Mark?" Olivia hesitated. She couldn't just appear in his life offering help without arousing suspicions about her true intentions or identity. "For now, just keep me informed about his situation, discreetly." That night, while Anna slept hugging her mother's diary, Mark stayed awake, planning his strategy for the following week. He had savings for 2 more weeks, at most. After that, he would have to make difficult decisions about the apartment, about Anna's school, about everything they had built together. But at the same time, reading Helen's diary had renewed his determination. She believed in him, believed in his integrity and his ability to overcome adversity. He couldn't disappoint her, nor disappoint Anna. "I'll find a solution," he murmured to himself, looking out the living room window. "One way or another, I'll find one." On the other side of the city, Olivia was also awake, looking out the window of her luxurious apartment. But her thoughts were completely focused on that simple family that had touched her heart in a way she had never experienced before. For the first time, in many years, Olivia felt that she had found something more valuable than money. She had found people who inspired her to be a better version of herself. Mark's second week of unemployment was even harder than the first. The few savings he had were quickly running out, and the pressure of overdue bills was becoming unbearable. On Monday, he received an eviction notice with a 15-day deadline to regularize the overdue rent. "Daddy, why are you looking at those papers with a sad face?" Anna asked during breakfast, noticing her father's worried expression. "It's just some adult matters, Princess. Nothing much." "Can I help? I can read some difficult words now." Mark smiled despite his anguish. "You help me just by existing, Anna. Just by being the wonderful girl you are." Anna jumped onto her father's lap and hugged him tightly. "I love you to infinity, Daddy." "And I love you more than infinity," Mark replied, feeling that he needed to be strong for her, no matter what happened. That same day, Olivia put her plan to visit the Grand View restaurant into action. She wore simpler clothes than usual, tied her hair back discreetly and removed most of her makeup, creating a completely different appearance from the millionaire businesswoman she truly was. Upon entering the restaurant, Olivia was greeted by a hostess who directed her to a table near the central counter, exactly where she wanted to be, to observe the establishment's internal dynamics. Victor appeared shortly after, circulating among the tables with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Olivia observed him closely, noticing how he treated the employees with a subtle arrogance, but evident to anyone who knew what to look for. "Luke!" Victor shouted at the cook. "Table 12's food took too long. What's your explanation for that?" Olivia saw Luke approach, clearly embarrassed. "Mr. Sterling, the food went out on normal time. Perhaps there was some confusion. Confusion is you not working properly. Next time I'll deduct it from your salary." The scene reminded Olivia of the stories Mark had told about the constant humiliations. She ordered the cheapest meal on the menu and watched intently for 2 hours, noticing a disturbing pattern in Victor's behavior. When she went to pay the bill, Olivia took the opportunity to strike up a conversation with the hostess. "Have you worked here long?" "About 8 months," the young woman replied, "since the previous manager left." "And what's it like to work here?" The girl looked around nervously before replying softly, "It's complicated. The atmosphere has changed a lot recently." Olivia left the restaurant even more certain that something was wrong there. She immediately called Aaron. "I want you to speed up the investigation into Victor Sterling, and I also want you to check if there have been any changes in the restaurant's accounting since he took over management." "I already have some preliminary information on that," Aaron replied. "Can I stop by your office today?" "Perfect. And Aaron, I also want you to find out who the true owner of the Grand View restaurant is." Meanwhile, Mark was in another frustrating job interview. The manager of a diner in the city center seemed interested in hiring him, until he found out he had a small daughter. "Look, Mark, you have good experience, but I need someone flexible, and single fathers usually have many time limitations." "I am very committed to my work," Mark insisted. "In the 3 years I worked at the previous restaurant, I never missed work because of my daughter. But what if she gets sick? What if the school calls? I need guarantees." Mark left the diner feeling defeated. For the first time since Helen had passed away, he began to question whether he would be able to take care of Anna alone. Maybe she would be better off with distant relatives who had more financial stability. This idea tormented him all the way home. When he arrived at the apartment, he found Anna sitting at the kitchen table, drawing another one of her stories. "Hi, Daddy. Look what I made." She showed a drawing of 2 people holding hands walking towards a rainbow. "It's us going to the land of happiness." Mark felt his eyes well up. How could he think of separating from that girl who loved him unconditionally? "It's beautiful, Anna. You're an amazing artist. The school principal said I can enter a drawing contest. The prize is a scholarship to an art school." "How wonderful, Princess. I'm sure you'll win." Anna hugged her father, and at that moment, Mark renewed his determination. No matter what happened, he would find a way to keep his family together. Late that afternoon, he received an unexpected call from Luke. "Mark, I need to tell you something important. I got some information about Victor that you'll want to know." "I'm listening." "Remember that accountant who showed up here last week? Well, I talked to him discreetly. He said he was investigating reports of financial irregularities at the restaurant." "What kind of irregularities?" "Apparently someone made an anonymous complaint about embezzlement, invoice manipulation, ghost suppliers. Victor is officially under investigation." Mark was surprised. "But who would make such a complaint?" "I don't know, but there's more. The accountant specifically asked about you. He said your name came up several times as a reference for an employee of integrity, and that you might have important information." "Me? But I don't know anything specific." "Mark, you worked there for 3 years. You must have noticed changes when Victor arrived. Differences in orders, in suppliers, in how things worked." Mark thought for a few moments. In fact, he had noticed several strange things, but he had never connected the dots. "Now that you mention it, yes, there were changes. Different suppliers, some orders that didn't make sense, discrepancies between the business volume and the amount of products that arrived." "Exactly. The accountant said he needs witnesses. People who worked at the restaurant before and after Victor took over. And you think I should talk to this accountant? I think you should consider it. If Victor is really doing illegal things, maybe your dismissal was to silence you." Mark was thoughtful. He had never considered this possibility, but it made sense. Victor had always shown hostility towards him, even before any personal friction. "Give me that accountant's contact, Luke. I'll think about it." That same night, as Mark reflected on the possibility of testifying against Victor, Olivia met with Aaron in her office to analyze the investigation results. "The findings are even worse than we imagined," Aaron said, spreading documents on the table. "Victor Sterling not only fired employees of integrity like Mark, but also created a sophisticated scheme of resource diversion. Explain better." "He falsifies orders to suppliers, creating ghost companies that exist only on paper. The money that should pay these non-existent suppliers goes directly into his personal accounts. In addition, he manipulates reported sales, declaring lower business volume than there actually is to pay fewer taxes." Olivia felt a growing anger. "And how long has this been going on?" "About 6 months. It coincides exactly with his arrival at the restaurant's management." "And Mark?" "Mark was fired because he knew the restaurant's previous operations very well. He could easily identify the irregularities if he stayed longer observing the changes." Olivia clenched her fists. Mark had lost his job not due to incompetence, but because he was too honest to be kept close to a criminal scheme. "Who is the true owner of the restaurant?" Aaron hesitated for a moment. "That information was harder to get, but I discovered that the current owner is a businessman named Peter Carmichael. He bought the restaurant 8 months ago, but apparently doesn't closely follow the daily operation." "Peter Carmichael, that name sounds familiar. He has several businesses in the region, restaurants, hotels, some service companies, a considerable fortune, but apparently not very involved in the day-to-day operations of his ventures." Olivia made some notes. "Aaron, I need you to arrange a meeting with me and Peter Carmichael. Urgent. And I also want a complete copy of all the evidence we have on Victor." "For what purpose?" "We're going to expose this man and correct the injustice that was done to Mark and other employees." "And how do you intend to do that without revealing your own identity in the investigation?" Olivia smiled for the first time since the beginning of that investigation. "Leave that to me, Aaron. I have a plan." The next day, Mark finally made up his mind and called the accountant Luke had mentioned. They arranged a meeting for that afternoon, and Mark mentally prepared to report everything he had observed during his 3 years at the Grand View restaurant. What he didn't know was that this accountant had been discreetly hired by Olivia, and that his decision to testify was about to put him at the center of a much larger operation to unmask Victor and restore justice at the restaurant. Anna, meanwhile, continued drawing her optimistic stories, creating a colorful world where her father always found solutions to all problems. If she knew how much these images strengthened Mark in the most difficult moments, she would probably draw even more. The truth was about to come to light, but there were still twists and surprises that none of those involved could foresee. Friday morning began seemingly normally at the Grand View restaurant. Victor arrived punctually at 10 o'clock, greeted some employees with his usual fake smile, and went to his office to review the numbers he had manipulated the night before. What he didn't know was that this would be the most significant morning of his dishonest career. Luke had been nervous since early morning. He knew Mark had met with the accountant the previous afternoon and that things were about to change drastically at the restaurant. During the meeting, Mark had provided detailed information about the changes he had observed in recent months, from inexplicable alterations in supplier orders to discrepancies in reported sales. "Your information confirms exactly what we suspected," the accountant had told Mark. "With your testimony, we have enough evidence to act." Around 11 o'clock, a seemingly casual group of people began to arrive at the restaurant. Peter Carmichael, the true owner, accompanied by 2 auditors. A few minutes later, an elegantly dressed woman arrived and requested a table near the central counter. Victor did not immediately recognize the importance of these presences. He was too busy trying to explain to a genuine supplier why payment was delayed again. "Good afternoon," Peter Carmichael said, approaching Victor. "I am Peter Carmichael, owner of this establishment. I would like to speak with you privately." Victor felt a chill down his spine. He rarely had direct contact with Peter, and his unannounced presence was not a good sign. "Of course, Mr. Carmichael. My office is at your disposal. I prefer our conversation to be right here, in the presence of employees and customers, Peter said with a tone that brooked no argument. After all, what I have to say concerns everyone's future. The restaurant's activity naturally slowed as people realized something important was happening. Luke discreetly came out of the kitchen, sensing that the moment of truth had arrived. Victor Sterling, Peter continued, loudly enough for everyone to hear. A few weeks ago I received serious allegations about irregularities in the management of this restaurant. I hired independent auditors to investigate these allegations. Victor tried to maintain his composure, but his face was visibly pale. Mr. Peter, I don't know what you're talking about. I have always run this restaurant with total transparency and— Silence, Peter interrupted him firmly. The auditors found irrefutable evidence of embezzlement, ghost suppliers, invoice manipulation, and unjustified dismissals of honest employees. It was at this moment that Olivia stood up from her table and walked towards the center of the restaurant. Her posture had completely changed. She was no longer the vulnerable woman Mark had helped on a rainy night, but a confident and determined businesswoman. Peter, she said, greeting the owner as if he were an old acquaintance. Thank you for accepting my suggestion to hold this public meeting. Victor looked from Peter to Olivia, confused about their connection. Excuse me, but who are you? Olivia smiled, but it was a cold, determined smile. My name is Olivia Muller, and I own 16 restaurants in this city, as well as other companies in the food sector. Victor's jaw literally dropped. Olivia Miller was a legend in the city's restaurant business, a millionaire businesswoman known for her rigorous ethics and impeccable business practices. And I, Olivia continued, was the one who made the anonymous complaint about your criminal activities in this establishment. But how did you know? How did I know? Because one rainy night, a few weeks ago, I met an honest man who had just been unfairly dismissed from this restaurant, a man named Mark Allianz. Luke felt his heart race. Somehow Mark was connected to that millionaire businesswoman, and she was there to defend his friend's honor. Mark didn't know who I was that night, Olivia explained to everyone present. He helped me because he is a genuinely good person, not because he expected anything in return. And when I learned that a man of such integrity had been fired by you, I decided to investigate personally. Victor tried one last bluff. This is ridiculous. Mark was a problematic employee, always questioning my decisions. He wasn't committed. Lies! Luke couldn't contain himself and shouted from the kitchen. Mark was the best employee this place ever had. You fired him because he knew the restaurant too well and could discover your schemes. Other employees began to murmur in agreement with Luke. The truth was finally coming out. Peter addressed Victor with a severe expression. The auditors found evidence that you embezzled over $50,000 in the last 6 months. Furthermore, you dismissed valuable employees and created a toxic work environment. I have here, one of the auditors said, showing a folder full of documents. All the necessary evidence for a criminal prosecution, false invoices, transfers to personal accounts, contracts with non-existent companies. Victor looked around desperately, realizing he had no escape from the situation. I can explain everything. It was a misunderstanding, complex administrative issues. The only thing you will explain is to the competent authorities, Peter said. You are immediately dismissed, and my lawyers will initiate all appropriate legal actions against you. It was at this moment that the restaurant door opened, and Mark entered, holding Anna's hand. He had been called by the accountant to be present during the revelation, but he didn't expect to find that scene. Anna immediately recognized Olivia and ran towards her. Aunt Olivia, what a surprise to see you here. Olivia knelt down to the girl's height, and for the first time since the meeting began, her face lit up with a genuine smile. Hi, Anna. It's good to see you again. Mark approached cautiously, still processing Olivia's presence in that context. She was clearly in control of the situation, and the way Peter and the others treated her suggested she was a very important person. Mark, Olivia said, standing up to greet him, there are some things I need to explain to you. Before she could continue, Anna pulled a folded paper from her school backpack. Aunt Olivia, look at the drawing I made. For you? It's about that night you stayed at our house. Anna unfolded the paper, revealing a colorful drawing that showed 3 figures: a tall man, a woman, and a small girl, all holding hands under a starry sky. Above them, a sentence was written in the careful handwriting of a 6-year-old. "My daddy always helps people, even when he's sad." The entire restaurant fell silent. Olivia took the drawing with slightly trembling hands and felt her eyes fill with tears. "Anna," she said with a choked voice, "this is the most beautiful drawing I have ever received in my life." "It's true what I wrote," Anna said innocently. "Daddy always helps everyone. Even when he's worried about the bills, he still shares his food with me and Aunt Clara when she forgets to buy bread." Mark was red with embarrassment, but also touched by his daughter's sincerity. Olivia looked at him with an expression that mixed admiration, gratitude, and something deeper. "Mark," she said solemnly, still holding Anna's drawing, "on that stormy night, you showed me a kind of wealth I didn't know existed. I didn't know there were still people like you in this world." "I don't understand," Mark said, confused. "Who exactly are you?" "I am someone who spent my whole life accumulating money, but had never found true humanity until I met you and Anna," Olivia replied honestly. "And now I am someone who wants to right the injustice that was done to you." Peter approached Mark. "Mr. Mark, I would like to invite you back to this restaurant, not just as an employee, but as general manager, with a salary commensurate with your experience and integrity." Mark was speechless. In a matter of minutes, his life had taken a complete turn. "Furthermore," Olivia added, "I would like to propose a partnership. I have plans to expand my businesses in the region, and I need someone I can completely trust to manage new ventures." Anna clapped her hands animatedly, not fully understanding what was happening, but realizing that these were good things for her father. Victor was escorted out of the restaurant by the security guards Peter had brought, muttering excuses that no one wanted to hear. The other employees applauded as he left, finally free from the tyranny they had faced in recent months. "Mark," Luke approached his friend with a huge smile. "It seems your princess was right about the magic. Good things really did come when you least expected them." Mark looked around the restaurant, at Olivia holding Anna's drawing, at Peter offering him opportunities he had never dreamed of, at his colleagues celebrating the end of Victor's oppressive management. For the first time in months, he felt he could breathe completely. Helen had been right in her diary writings. Integrity and kindness truly were rewarded, even if it sometimes took time for them to be recognized. "Anna," Mark said, picking up his daughter, "it seems our castle with a big garden is closer than we imagined." "I knew it," Anna replied happily. "Mommy always said that good things happen to good people, and you are the best person in the whole world, Daddy." Olivia observed the scene between father and daughter with an emotion she could no longer contain. At that moment she knew that her life had also changed forever, not because of business or money, but because of the privilege of having found a family that had taught her the true meaning of wealth. 6 months later, the Grandview restaurant was recognized as one of the best in the city, not only for the quality of its food, but also for its welcoming atmosphere and the ethical way it treated employees and customers. Mark had become a minority partner in the business. Anna was developing her artistic talent in a specialized school, and Olivia had found the family she had always dreamed of having. On the restaurant's main wall, lovingly framed, was the first drawing Anna had made for Olivia. "My daddy always helps people, even when he's sad." It was a daily reminder that genuine kindness always finds a way to be rewarded, and that the best transformations in life begin with simple acts of humanity. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Mark, Anna, and Olivia has touched your hearts as much as it touched ours during this narration. This journey reminds us that true wealth is not in the money we accumulate, but in the human connections we build and the kindness we spread throughout the world. To continue experiencing these emotions, we have prepared a special playlist with equally engaging and inspiring stories. Find more exciting content by clicking here on the side. If this story awakened feelings in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on this video. Every day we bring accounts that celebrate the complexity of human life, the strength of true love, and the transformative power of kindness. Share in the comments how this story touched you and what lessons you will take into your own lives. We look forward to seeing you on our next emotional journey.